pink-haired Koby, the future of the Marines, has the craziest future that you just so happen to miss. Like, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why Koby has always worn a flower bandana on his forehead? This is gonna be the classic Oda foreshadowing that you've all known to come and love. Like, think about how Luffy claimed that he wasn't a Zoan devil fruit user just for that to be erased hundreds of chapters later. Or think about how Luffy ate the sun god Nika devil fruit. This made him relate to monkey god Hanumanji, who also tried eating the sun thinking it was a regular fruit. Now we know that in Road to Laugh Tale Volume 4, Oda labeled Luffy as monkey god Hanuman, fulfilling the foreshadow. And we also know that when Luffy defeated Kaido, he used an attack called Bajrang gun, which is another way of saying Hanuman gun. I've detected these types of things. I've been detecting Oda's way of foreshadowing time and time again. And let me promise you something, Koby is no different. And this is because Koby's bandana of a lotus flower is a hint to his future devil fruit, the Hito Hito no Mi model Buddha, who just so happens to come from the Panma family, also known as the Lotus family. But it goes even deeper. It goes way deeper than this. For example, could you guess what Sengoku's only named attack in the entire story is? Guess what it's called? Impact Wave, which is much similar to the shockwave punch that Koby uses when he does Honesty Impact. Now I'm going to tell you something that is going to blow your mind, so prepare to use your imagination. Think about what I'm about to tell you. When Sengoku uses his Buddha fruit, his whole body is enlarged and he goes in the same pose as Gear 4 Luffy. Now imagine if Luffy and Koby were fighting alongside each other and both of them were in huge bodied forms while doing the exact same pose. These are the soft clues, the soft foreshadowing leading to a conclusion where Luffy has a mythical Zoan of Nika and Koby has a mythical Zoan of Buddha. But before we dive 10 times deeper than that, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss the sickest One Piece theory videos on all of YouTube. Now in order to make sense of this all, we have to actually talk about Buddha from Buddhism and get to know what he's all about and how it works. Well, we know that the Buddha is closely related to the Lotus because he comes from the Lotus family, also known as the Padma family. I find this to be very closely related to Koby because he's always wearing flower bandanas. Not only that, but some of those bandanas even look like lotuses, and it goes even deeper when you look into what a lotus actually is. It mostly comes in the colors of white and pink, which again fits the character of Koby. What a coincidence. Maybe that white and pink is like a mixture for Koby, or maybe the white is a play on Luffy's Gear 5, Luffy's Nika fruit, and then the pink is a play on Koby's hair, pink-haired Koby. We also know that the Buddha has 3 main tenets, and one of them is about rebirth. But just off the fact that Buddha is so closely related to rebirth makes it seem like someone else is gonna get that devil fruit. There's gonna be another Buddha rebirth. Maybe even in the Navy, there might be another Buddha character, another Buddha Marine that ends up coming out of nowhere because the Buddha will be reborn. Now we also know that the Buddha was a regular human and he sought enlightenment, which to me seems very similar to Marineford and Koby. What happened post Marineford? Koby had some kind of enlightenment. He realized and awakened his Haki. However you want to word that and pitch that, it seems along the same kind of lines. Like Oda could have used that for all these sort of characters throughout Marineford, but it was only Koby that he did it for. As we know that Luffy awakened his Conqueror's Haki and he used it a little bit earlier than that. But again, these kinds of ties, these types of details, especially when you pull out the microscope and you look at Buddha, it fits Koby all too well. I also find it very interesting that Oda made it such a big point to explain and show us how normal and human Koby is. Think about One Piece chapter 1088. Helmeppo was going on a big tangent talking about how Koby used to train 2 years ago. He would punch the battleship bags till his fist would bleed. He had bandages all over his shoulders. Koby was going very hard night and day. But what was the point of this? Why was Koby doing this? He claimed that he's just a regular human and he has to work 100 to 200 times harder than everyone else. Again, this seems very similar to Buddha, who was a regular human. And by him training and him working on himself, he reached enlightenment and reached the status of a god. Now, looking at how Koby's a Marine and his biggest dream is to become an admiral, we know that admirals what? They get a devil fruit when they are promoted. So if the Buddha devil fruit made its way in the hands of Koby, how poetic is that? A regular human reaching godhood in a sense. Now, another cool detail about Buddha, he was said to have never lied in his entire life. Why does this relate to Koby? One of his only named attacks is Honesty Impact. Oda would not make an attack called Honesty Impact and give it to Koby for no reason. This is very important because the impact part of the phrase derives from Garp, because we know that Garp used an attack called Galaxy Impact on Hachinosu, and he also used an attack called Impact Divide. But there's another portion to the phrase, there's another part of the name when it comes to this attack from Koby. Honesty. Why would Oda go out of his way to illustrate this for Koby? Like, is it just because it's simple-minded, it's surface level, Koby's an honest character? No, we're talking about Ichiro Oda, the author of One Piece. We've seen this man over and over again foreshadow things hundreds of chapters in advance. Whether it's a really cool, interesting way that you have to look deeply into the story for, or whether it's right in front of your face in a very simple manner. Here's an example of that. We saw that Frankie earlier on in the story Koby was wearing a shirt that said Hito, and the O in Hito was what? A sun. Hito Hito no Mi, model sun god Nika. These are the types of things that Oda likes to throw around in his story. So it might sound wild to compare Koby's flower bandana to the lotus for Buddha, but think about that. We're talking about Oda. And this stretches even to honesty impact, where it's such an important thing to label Koby as an honest person. Why? Because Buddha was known to have never lied. Now again, when it comes to Sengoku, as we said before, he only has one named attack in the entire story, Impact Wave. Now when you look at that attack, as well as, several other unnamed attacks from Sengoku, he's using like these shockwave punches, which again is very similar to not only Garp, who trained Koby, but Koby himself. I find this to be very poetic, and if Koby was to have that Buddha devil fruit, it would already fit his fighting style basically. So if this fruit landed in the hands of Koby, it would not drastically alter his fighting style, his combat style. It would only complement it. It would be the icing on the cake, the cherry on top. And speaking about Sengoku, this impact wave, when did we see this, guys? During Marineford, when the Buddha was going against who? The Blackbeard pirates, fighting them head on. Now it seems to come full circle when we think about the next Buddha, Koby, getting captured by the Blackbeard pirates. That seems to be again one of these little clues, like this little pattern that Oda likes to illustrate all throughout the story. Now there's actually a famous story about the Buddha which tells about how in a previous life, the Buddha took pity on a starving tigress who might have otherwise had to eat her newborn cubs. So Buddha sacrificed himself instead in order to save the newborn babies. I find this to be very similar to how in 1088, Koby said that he would sacrifice himself for a newborn and an old man. Again, why is Oda going out of his way to illustrate these things? Yeah, we know Koby's a good guy. Yes, Oda wants us to think highly of Koby, have us respect Koby, but it goes deeper than that. It's never this just surface level. It's because Koby relates to the Buddha and the devil fruit even more than Sengoku. Sengoku was fighting the Blackbeard pirates. He was almost like propagating the war. He was the one putting these Marines on the battlefield, risking their lives just like a Kainu. And what did Koby do throughout Marineford War? Try to stop the war, try to bring peace, try to explain that senseless killing and murder is not the wave. So again, when you think about the Buddha and think about the Buddha devil fruit, it would fit Koby much more than Sengoku, especially when you consider that it's a Zoan devil fruit in the first place. We learned in recent chapters, chapter 1044, that Zoan devil fruits have a will of their own. So it's highly speculated throughout the One Piece community that all these Zoan devil fruits choose their user. They're looking for the perfect match as if this was Tinder. And what's gonna happen if Sengoku dies? That fruit's gonna make his way to Koby because it knows Koby's intentions. It saw Koby's intentions firsthand. Now we also know that the Buddha was a son of royalty, so I'm thinking that maybe Oda's gonna eventually give us a Koby flashback to show us his origins and possibly his relation to royalty. Because I find it really interesting that Koby was introduced so early on in the story. What was it, chapter 2? And yet we haven't gotten any kind of backstory for him. This is a character that's supposed to, go rivalry in a sense, almost like neck and neck with Luffy. This is someone who's gunning for, Admiral of the Marines. Why haven't we gotten a backstory for him? Why did he just suddenly appear on Alvida? It's probably because we're eventually going to get a Koby flashback. And maybe he'll even be, part of a celestial dragon family that, maybe he got lost. Maybe he was exiled or something. And it would be, again, beautiful to have another one of these characters, similar to Shanks, who has celestial dragon blood. But it doesn't end up mattering because of their own personal beliefs, their own virtues, and their own morals. Now, one of the 5 precepts of Buddha ethics states, I undertake the training rule to abstain from killing. The Buddha reportedly stated, victory breeds hatred. The defeated lives in pain. This again fits the character arc of Koby. Out of anyone in the entire story to try and stop the Marineford War, try to speak about all this senseless killing, aside from Shanks, who was it? It was Koby, a Marine, who even stood against who? An admiral, who ended up being a future fleet admiral. This is again showing how Koby doesn't believe in war. He doesn't believe in killing. He doesn't believe in violence, much similar to the Buddha. And may I remind you, Sengoku didn't even have that same kind of thought process. He didn't have that same kind of belief, but yet he still has the Buddha devil fruit. I do believe Sengoku has certain traits about him that caused him to receive this fruit in the first place. Again, since it's a Zoan devil fruit, but again, it's gonna fit Koby even better. Someone who doesn't value violence, doesn't value war and senseless murder. So in the future, when Sengoku ends up dying, it'll be Koby who inherits the devil fruit, especially when you think about his dream to become an admiral, possibly even a fleet admiral. Why does this matter? Every time they're promoted and they reach this status and they reach this rank, they earn a devil fruit. We saw this with Akainu, Aokiji, Green Bull, Fujitora, Kizaru, and probably future others. They all end up having devil fruits. So again, how beautiful is it for Fleet Admiral Sengoku to have this mythical Zoan of a Buddha, and then future Admiral, maybe even future Fleet Admiral Koby, to once again have a mythical Zoan Buddha. It would be up to Koby, who becomes the Fleet Admiral of the Marines, to change the system system and make it much more peaceful to have the Buddha devil fruit. It's much more fitting for Koby versus Sengoku to be the new Buddha of the Navy. Now, when you look at the interesting dynamic between Koby and Helmeppo, a lot of fans would actually compare it to Garp and Sengoku. But, you know, in this sense, I do understand that Koby was using battleship bags, much similar to Garp, but I think in this context, they're gonna twist it a little bit. Instead of Helmeppo inheriting the devil fruit of Sengoku and playing the role of Sengoku, I think it's gonna be Koby who inherits the devil fruit of Sengoku and inherits the will of Buddha. And in many other ways, it'll be up to Koby to fulfill the role of Garp. But again, I think Oda's gonna add this little twist there. That way Koby isn't the exact same character as Garp. Yes, Oda's always gonna parallel these characters and make them share a lot of traits, but Oda never makes them the exact same character. And I would actually find it kind of cool to have that twist, where Koby's, you know, this Garp the Fist kind of character. He's a hardcore Marine in certain ways, but at the same time, he's gonna go take a slightly different approach than Garp by having a devil fruit. And where would this devil fruit come from? Where would it derive from? Garp's best friend, Sengoku. Now, there are a bunch of details about this whole kind of theory of Koby inheriting the devil fruit that are a bit tinfoil. Now, these aren't things I would necessarily die on the hill for, but I just thought I'd just throw them in the video in case you guys happen to like them. So, you know, in chapter 1088, we saw young Koby 2 years ago, you know, in the pre-time skip getting trained and raised by Garp. During this moment, some One Piece fans actually mentioned to me like, hey, haven't you guys noticed that Koby's hair looks like the seagull on Sengoku's hat? I think this is pretty funny. You know, again, not something I would die on the hill for, but this does seem like some silly thing that Oda might actually throw in there. Have Koby relate to Sengoku so much. For what purpose? Because he's gonna inherit the devil fruit. Look at these two side by side. It's almost like you can't unsee it now. And which, by the way, Koby and Sengoku both wear glasses and they both wear that white coat over the shoulder. As far as their appearance goes, maybe one has black hair and one has pink hair, but there are a few similarities between the two. And then you also have narrative details. Like for an example, Sengoku in a way was a Marine spy because he was talking to people like who? Corazon. He was also talking to people like Law. What do we know about Koby now? He's a member of the Sword faction of the Marines, a secret faction of the Marines. Again, Oda's having all these little similarities and even big similarities between Koby and Sengoku to draw a connection. But why would that connection matter so much? Is it because it's father and son? Is it because they're brothers? No, it's gonna be because Koby inherits the devil fruit Buddha from Sengoku. Now, I actually want to talk about the future dynamic of Luffy and Koby because One Piece fans sleep on this. Again, we know that Luffy's basically gonna become the Pirate King. It's like a safe headcanon. But what about Koby? Well, again, he expressed how he's gonna become an admiral, and most One Piece fans would even argue that in the far, far future, Koby would be a fleet admiral. But what would this actually look like? Can they live in harmony, the Pirate King and the fleet admiral? Yes. When you look into Luffy's lore, again in Road to Laugh Tale Volume 4, Oda admitted that Luffy's inspiration was Hanumanji from Hinduism. Now, when you look in Hinduism, it's largely supported in India, and I think that's in a very similar vein to Buddha from Buddhism. Again, having Hanumanji and Buddha side by side, the Pirate King and the Fleet Admiral side by side, Luffy and Koby side by side, I think that's so beautiful and poetic. These huge, popular, famous deities that are all over India and China, mostly India. We also know that Gautama Buddha worked together with the Monkey King in strife in order to be engulfed in victory. Again, why does this matter? You could argue that Garp and Sengoku play that role, the Monkey King and Buddha, but let's be real, no One Piece fan has ever labeled Garp as the Monkey King. Plus, we know that Luffy's gonna be the one to be the Pirate King, and we all call Luffy a Monkey King or like a monkey god. But besides the point, I think that this is gonna fulfill that role yet again. Garp and Sengoku, Luffy and Koby, and it's gonna be much more prevalent, it's gonna be much more powerful when we see the Luffy side of things, because Luffy's gonna become the Pirate King. Luffy has the Sun God Nika fruit. Luffy's the one that's based on Monkey King, Monkey God Hanumanji. So to give this Buddha fruit to Koby, again, we would have the Buddha working with who? The Monkey King, as we know from real life lore. And again, no matter which way you turn your head, no matter which way you slice it, it just seems so beautiful and poetic that both Luffy and Koby, who met at the beginning of the story, made a promise. I'm gonna become Pirate King, I'm gonna become Fleet Admiral. They both have devil fruits, hopefully in the future. They both have mythical Zoans, and both of these mythical Zoans would be based off of real religious deities, Nika and Buddha. Again, making this very poetic, making them an awesome duo or an awesome dynamic. And when you look at Sengoku, again, the Marines were still corrupt at that time when he was Fleet Admiral and he was running things, even if he had the Buddha devil fruit. But most One Piece fans can agree that the Celestial Dragons will be taken down at the end of the story. Why does this matter? Because Luffy's gonna work hard and he's gonna become become the Pirate King in order to bring harmony and peace into the world. But isn't it more poetic if Buddha was at the fleet of the, top of the Marines? Wouldn't it be so poetic if the Fleet Admiral Buddha and the Pirate King Nika Harumaji worked together to bring harmony in the world, to bring freedom in the world, to fix all the evil and the corruption? I think, again, that's another beautiful dynamic. But this wouldn't work unless Koby reached Fleet Admiral status or Admiral status while having the Buddha Devil Fruit. Now, I did mention this earlier, and I just want to quickly remind you about it. During Marineford, when Sengoku was attacking the Blackbeard pirates, he used the same exact pose that Luffy does when he's in Gear 4. Why does this matter? Picture this dynamic between Fleet Admiral Koby and Pirate King Luffy. You would have both of them doing the same pose. You would have both of them with a big belly, both of them with an enlarged belly, both of them caring about freedom, both of them caring about harmony. This is just such a beautiful dynamic. It's such a beautiful duo between these two characters. And again, this can only be made possible if Koby gets the Buddha Devil Fruit. And by getting this Buddha Devil Fruit, which is a mythical Zoan, Koby will inherit the will of the Fleet Admiral, will inherit the will of the Buddha. Very similar to how Luffy, inherited the will of Joy Boy or Sun God Nika, however you want to slice that. So again, take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Luffy inherited the will of the Pirate King Goldie Roger, and Koby's gonna inherit the will of the former Fleet Admiral Sengoku. These are the pinnacle of each of their factions. Luffy and Roger reach the pinnacle of piracy. Koby and Sengoku are gonna reach the pinnacle of being a Marine. Now, in order for all of this to happen, Sengoku has to die. That's the only known way so far for, another user to inherit the will or inherit a Devil Fruit in general. Think about what's going on in chapter 1088 though. We see Garp going against basically the entire Blackbeard army, the whole Blackbeard crew. We know that Law ended up getting defeated by Blackbeard, so Blackbeard could be on his way to Egghead, or maybe he's on his way to Hachinosu. If Blackbeard goes to Hachinosu, Garp doesn't have that many options. He's already stabbed in the chest by people like Aokiji. He was also stabbed through the chest by people like Shiryu, and he's getting frozen up. He's literally on the ground bleeding out. So it seems like Garp having this unknown fate as stated in 1088, it seems like he doesn't have that many options. So think about Sengoku. What do we know about him? He's best friends. He's great friends with Garp. Recently, they even threw in that little panel about them eating the same cookie, the same rice cake together. I now think Sengoku has a high chance of going after the Blackbeard pirates in order to save Garp, his best friend. When we think about Sengoku's past, he has huge regret for not helping Corazon. Even to this day, Sengoku is crying. He regrets not saving Corazon. Is he gonna allow this to happen again? There's no shot he will. Think about how Garp regrets not saving Ace, how Garp wishes he stood up to Akainu, and he's not gonna let that slide when the Blackbeard pirates capture Koby. So I believe the same kind of logic, the same kind of pattern is gonna happen to Sengoku. He's gonna look at Corazon and be like, not this time. I'm not letting it happen again. I care about my best friend. I care about Garp the Fist, my old right hand man, this guy that I spent decades living with, decades training with. I'm gonna go after the Blackbeard pirates. I'm gonna go save Garp, and I'm probably gonna die in the process. And by Sengoku dying in the process and his fruit spawning in the world, I believe this mythical Zoan, who has a will of its own, will make his way to Koby, the one who doesn't believe in war, doesn't believe in senseless murder, the one that believes in peace and self-sacrifice. This is the kind of thing that Oda is probably going to set up. Now let's take a step back and rewind. The very beginning of the story. What did Koby proclaim? What did he promise to Luffy? What did he vow to the world? To become an admiral. And what do we know about the admirals? Every single one that we've seen, they inherit a devil fruit at the end of their journey. So let me ask you, when Koby reaches his dream towards the very end of One Piece, the whole end of the story, and he reaches the admiral status, what devil fruit is he going to inherit?